The reading this morning is from an interview with Betty Reed Soskin in the fall of 1992. As you may know, Betty was a prominent community activist, active in many capacities, best known probably because at the age of 85, she became a National Park Service Ranger and educated visitors to the World War II Homefront National Historic Park about working conditions for African Americans during the war, and more specifically in the shipbuilding industry around Richmond. Betty retired from this position when she was 101, the oldest serving park ranger, and she passed away just last month at the age of 104. So the interview reads in part, Betty found herself begging for time when asked recently to participate in a local UU Society's Martin Luther King Jr. commemoration. She wants the minister, quote, to meet with the church people and talk about how sad it is that they don't have the benefit of the gifts of my people. Not, let's get together and talk about those awful things that white people have done to black people. That's not where it's at anymore. You need to do that, and I don't even have to be there for that to happen, because racism is dependent upon fixing those people over there somehow so they fit in. Where the real truth is that you need to do something about the racism in white folks. I've lost my need to change people. I don't feel like I want to fix those folks over there. So I'm in a kind of limbo. I do what I'm doing, and I gain strength from the fact that I'm a Unitarian and that I had 20 to 25 years of strong Unitarian training. That's what really freed me to be whole enough to do the kinds of things I'm doing now. But I don't feel like the church followed. I've been able to do some remarkable things on my own, but I've gotten the courage to get out there and do those things by the very fact that I am a Unitarian.
Thank you, Lindley. And thank you, Marilyn, for sharing what Betty Reed Soskin said to me, a first-term seminarian, more than 30 years ago. I reached out to her when I was brand new to learn about a history of our denomination I hadn't known about. And when I learned here a month ago that she had died, I was shaken. I wasn't sure the person that some of you were describing was the person I remembered. Turns out it was. What's the old tale about 3 blind men and an elephant? We only know what we can sense, and what we can sense will never be exactly what the next person does. Besides, we are all complex, containing multitudes, as Walt Whitman once said. If the questions that Betty raises resonate with you and you would like to pursue them or hear me pursue them, let me know. We can do that. But I have a different message for you today. I don't know about you, but I'm having trouble concentrating these days. The last 2 Sundays, I felt I could rise to the occasion. This week, not so much. My mind wanders even more than usual. I haven't been pulled out of my car by masked federal agents while I was on the way to a doctor's appointment. ICE didn't harass our pizza delivery guy on Thursday night when we ordered pizza in. My family, I mentioned last week, in Minneapolis is safe, though feeling anxious, angry, and powerless in equal measure. And when I say family in Minneapolis, while I have a cousin and her family there too, I primarily mean my Uncle Ken, who lives by himself in Richfield, a suburb directly south of Minneapolis. He's been a sort of big brother to me, as he is closer in age to me than he was to my late father. During my last autumn in Ottawa, so this was the autumn of 24, when I was working out getting an extension to my work visa and wasn't guaranteed re-entry into Canada if I were to leave the country, my Uncle Ken suffered a heart attack. And because I couldn't go to be with him to help him once he got home from the hospital, my younger brother, Glenn, drove up to Minnesota for a week from his home in Austin, Texas. I was set to visit Ken last November, but the air traffic controller fiasco kept me grounded. My brother Glenn and I are thinking about a trip to Minnesota this spring when it's a little warmer for our California and Texas blood. And now I've heard the call for clergy to gather in the Twin Cities later this week. Our denomination is even chipping in up to $1,000 each for travel support. That is wonderful, sort of thing we need to be doing. I won't be making the trip though, because I now have California blood and it is January in Minnesota. Been there, done that. And I have signed up weeks ago to participate in an all-day non-cooperation training at our church in Oakland next Saturday. Minnesota will still be there in the spring. Maybe Ken and I will take my brother Glenn to his first Powderhorn Park May Day celebration this year, the one I mentioned to you last week. These last several days I've had 2 things going through my mind. You know, like a song you can't get rid of. These aren't songs, these are sayings, things I've heard. The first is something a man named Jesse said to me some time back. Jesse and I had a pen pal thing going for a while when I lived out here before. He had written to the church I then served from his cell in the new portion of Folsom Prison. For a couple years, we wrote letters back and forth. He let me know about his brother's death. The man had died of an overdose on his 23rd birthday. The news didn't reach Jesse until 6 months later. He was devastated. Jesse was what some might call a hard man, and he was certainly not an ideal prisoner, attempting to escape while he was sent to medical care in Davis. He was in maximum security when I visited him. Jesse had to crouch down to lower his hands so that they were level with an opening in the security door so his handcuffs could be unlocked, enabling him to hold the phone receiver that allowed us to talk through the thick glass. And then when our time was up, he had to crouch down again so that the cuffs could be reattached behind him. From my interactions with Jesse, I learned how important it can be to keep one's pride. After all, so much can be taken, even stripped away, but not our pride and not our love. The thing he said that has stuck with me to this day and more this week is that there are more prison fights during wartime. Now, I don't know if that's objectively true. I haven't heard any studies on that. But it makes sense to me that there would be. When violence is in the air, we are unsettled. When we're unsettled, it's easier to snap into anger, snap into lashing out. When we're unsettled, it can be hard to concentrate. I know this firsthand. You may as well. Some might say that this is a grief response, and it may be, but I kind of think it's more than that as well. The other thing going through my mind these days has been something the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said during his address to the Southern Christian Leadership Conference on the 16th of August, 1967. I expect you've heard it, perhaps several times before. Power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power, at its best, is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice, at its best, is power correcting everything that stands against love. If I had a medicine bundle, a leather pouch tied around my neck, I'd print those words out, roll them up, and carry them close to my heart. They ring like the medicine I most need now, perhaps even the wisdom our nation needs most now. Change of gears a bit. Between June and July of 2003, I spent a sabbatical month in the Republic of South Africa. There, on a Saturday evening, I was at a house party in Soweto, the township's southwest of Johannesburg proper, where I met the Reverend Paul Messiah. Reverend Messiah, I love saying that name. Reverend Messiah invited me to preach at his church. Yes, wonderful, happy to. Oh, you want me to preach tomorrow morning? Here's proof. Patrick, if we could have the slide. I hope we have the slide. There we go. That's me. I was younger then. I had never before preached in hiking boots, but it's all I had with me. And Reverend Messiah's extra robe fit me, barely. The service was both in English and the language of Nelson Mandela's birth, Xhosa. So I would say a bit, and then the man pictured just behind me to my left provided the translation. The young woman in the lower left of the frame later fell out during a choral anthem. And by fell out, I mean that she started writhing, being filled with the Spirit, and had to be carried out by two folks with strong backs. This was a new experience to me. This doesn't happen in Unitarian Universalist congregations. And while Reverend Messiah said that it embarrassed him because of all the attention she drew to herself, I was kind of impressed. What I said to them that morning was that our faith, that I took inspiration from their faith and activism, and that I wished that our Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., our Martin, would have been able to meet their Madiba, the affectionate nickname of Nelson Mandela. Now, in the African American tradition, I would never call Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Martin, but Martin and Madiba kind of went together. No disrespect to anyone. I thanked these people, native of Soweto, for their courage and told them that they were never, had never been alone. So that's what I've been doing this week when I haven't been able to concentrate on anything else, reminiscing on the lessons and experiences I've gained along the way. And in those lessons, I've found at least some wisdom for facing the challenges of this moment. The need for courage, the pervasiveness of personal unrest and how it can so quickly lead to violence, and how crucial is the interplay between love and justice. A couple other nuggets before I close. I've begun rereading Timothy Snyder's book from 2018, The Road to Unfreedom. Well, the book was first published in 2018. In May of 23, he wrote this in a new foreword. The road to unfreedom means the indisputable trend away from democracy. As a historian, I was struck both by the weight of the events in Russia, Europe, and America, and by the trend of looking away, making excuses, pretending that nothing was happening. I used the word unfreedom rather than tyranny or authoritarianism for this reason. Unfreedom includes our own complicity, the part we play in the decline of democracy by our own willful confusion or needless complacency. Friends, what Snyder says there rings true to me. May our current phrase of unfreedom in this nation prove to be more fleeting than I fear it will be. And last, two poems that have kept me company this week. The first from the late Pat Snyder, a poet from Amherst, Massachusetts. Is there an angel in the house? If there is, come to me. And if you aren't too tired or otherwise occupied, and if it isn't too tacky a request, please rock me. I am bruised. If you will hold me until morning, I promise I will rise and light the fire and bake the bread and put back on my shoulder my corner of the world. But for now, I could use the shelter of a wing. Excuse me, is there an angel in the house? And to close, a poem I discovered while in South Africa by the Soweto poet Oswald Mtshali, titled Walls. I've adapted it to be more gender inclusive. Our kind are great wall builders, the Berlin Wall, the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem, but the wall most impregnable has a moat flowing with fright around our hearts. A wall without windows for the spirit to breeze through, a wall without a door for love to walk in. Our hearts may be bruised or worse. Our minds may be restless. On this Martin Luther King Jr. Day weekend, I wish all of us inspiration from those in our past who have found the faith to hope and love despite the odds. May we find salves, angels' wings for our unrest, and the courage to hold fast to what is precious, good, and true. So may it be.